Imagine two bullies tripping over each other while chasing a much smaller kid. Except it's not a playground. It's the ocean. And the bullies are giant Chinese ships. This wasn't just a minor mistake. It was a public, humiliating disaster for a country obsessed with looking strong. What does this epic fail mean for China's ambitions at sea? Let's find out. August 11th, 2025, near Scarborough Shoal, a flashpoint in the West Philippine Sea. This area, a cluster of rocks and reefs, has long been a symbol of tension between the Philippines and China. For years, both countries have claimed these waters, but on this day, the world would witness a maritime standoff unlike any before. The BRP Suluan, a small but resolute Philippine Coast Guard ship, was on a routine patrol. Its mission, to assert the country's rights and protect Filipino fishermen in these contested waters. The crew, outnumbered and outgunned, knew the risks, but for them, this was about more than just territory. It was about national pride and standing up to a giant. Suddenly, the calm was shattered. Two massive Chinese ships, a heavily armed Navy destroyer and a hulking Coast Guard vessel, charged in, bearing down on the much smaller Filipino ship. Their intent was clear: intimidate, overwhelm, and force the BRP Suluan to retreat. The size difference was almost comical, like a schoolyard bully cornering a much smaller kid. The Chinese ships tried to box in the Suluan, cutting off its escape routes. The Coast Guard vessel unleashed a powerful water cannon, sending torrents of water crashing onto the Filipino deck. It was a show of force meant to send a message, not just to the Suluan but to the entire region. But in their aggressive maneuvering, something went wrong. The two Chinese ships, so focused on intimidating the smaller vessel, lost track of each other's positions. In a split second, metal met metal. The destroyer and the Coast Guard ship collided, hard. The impact sent a shudder through the water, echoing the chaos of their failed intimidation. The aftermath was dramatic. The Coast Guard ship's bow was shattered, twisted, and splintered from the force of the collision. The Navy destroyer, built for war, was left with a massive dent along its hull. Both vessels were suddenly vulnerable, their pride and power literally battered. Meanwhile, the BRP Suluan, the supposed underdog, sailed away untouched. Its crew watched as the two Chinese giants limped off, their aggressive posturing now a source of embarrassment. Against all odds, the little ship had outmaneuvered its would-be bullies without firing a single shot. This wasn't just a minor accident, it was a spectacular self-own, a moment of hubris caught on camera for the world to see. The footage quickly spread, showing the world how arrogance and aggression can backfire in the most unexpected ways. News outlets across the globe replayed the incident, dissecting every frame. Analysts called it a turning point, a rare moment when the supposed bullies became the punchline. The world watched as the balance of power shifted, if only for a moment, in favor of the underdog. Sometimes the little guy just has to keep his cool, hold his ground, and let the big guys crash under the weight of their own arrogance. In the West Philippine Sea on that August day, that's exactly what happened. So what did China do when the incident made headlines around the world? In a move that surprised absolutely no one, Chinese officials quickly went on the offensive, determined to control the narrative before anyone else could. The world watched as Beijing's spokespersons took to the podium, ready to deflect blame and rewrite the story in real time. Their first move? Blame the victim, of course. It's a classic play from the Crisis Management Handbook. Shift attention, sow doubt, and hope the world buys it. Chinese officials and state media wasted no time. They immediately accused the Philippines of dangerous maneuvers and illegal intrusion into what they claim are Chinese waters. News anchors repeated the official line, and headlines blared accusations, painting the Philippines as the reckless party. But there was a glaring omission in their story. Nowhere did they mention that a Chinese Navy destroyer was right there in the thick of it, playing a central role in the confrontation. That detail was conveniently left out of every official statement and news report. The Philippines, however, had something China didn't count on: video proof. Clear, undeniable footage from the Philippine Coast Guard showed exactly what happened. Chinese ships aggressively maneuvering, closing in, and ultimately causing the collision. The evidence was so clear it left little room for debate. International maritime law experts quickly weighed in. According to the rules of the sea, the overtaking vessel, in this case China's ships, are always responsible for avoiding a collision. Legal panels and maritime authorities around the world reviewed the footage and agreed. The blame rested squarely with China. Their carefully crafted narrative began to unravel. The Philippines responded with calm confidence. Instead of escalating the war of words, they simply released the footage to the world. At a press conference, officials played the video for journalists, letting the images speak for themselves. The message was clear. Here's what really happened. Judge for yourself. China's attempt to spin the story backfired. As international media picked up the Philippine footage, Chinese officials found themselves on the defensive, struggling to explain away the evidence. Their denials and shifting explanations only made them look clumsy and, frankly, dishonest. The real lesson here? In an age of cameras and instant communication, you can't hide from the truth, or from the rules that govern the seas. Every move is recorded, every action scrutinized. Sometimes the best defense isn't a clever story or a loud denial. It's simply showing the receipts, letting the facts and the footage do all the talking. The world noticed and reacted fast. The U.S. ambassador to Manila condemned China's reckless actions, making it clear America stood with the Philippines. Japan, Australia, and New Zealand joined in, calling for de-escalation and respect for international law. This wasn't just a local embarrassment, it became a global concern. China spends billions to look like a responsible leader, but this incident shattered that image. Instead of looking strong, China looked reckless and incompetent. The world's response was unified. Enough is enough. The collision gave every worried neighbor a perfect example of why China's aggression is a problem. Sometimes one mistake is all it takes to change the conversation. China's reputation took a hit that no amount of spin could fix. The world was watching, tensions were high, and then, almost on cue, the U.S. Navy made its move. For months, the region had been simmering with uncertainty as China pushed its claims and the Philippines looked for support. But now, the unmistakable silhouette of American warships appeared on the horizon, signaling a dramatic shift in the standoff. 2 American warships sailed right by Scarborough Shoal in a freedom of navigation operation, the first such maneuver in years. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was a calculated move, designed to send a message not only to Beijing, but to every nation watching the South China Sea. This was no routine patrol. The U.S. Navy was making it clear, international waters are just that, international. By sailing so close to the contested shoal, the Americans were directly challenging China's sweeping claims and at the same time showing the Philippines that they weren't alone in this fight. In Beijing, officials scrambled to control the narrative. State media tried to downplay the incident, but the images of U.S. warships in what China calls its waters were impossible to ignore. The world's attention was now fixed on the South China Sea, and China's leaders were forced to respond. The Chinese military faced a dilemma: confront the Americans and risk a dangerous escalation, or do nothing and appear weak in front of both their own people and the international community. Every move was being watched, every decision weighed for its global impact. China was cornered, and the stakes had never been higher. Meanwhile, the U.S. wasn't just flexing its naval power. American officials began high-level talks with their Philippine counterparts, discussing the deployment of advanced missile launchers and new defense systems on Philippine soil. This was a clear sign that the U.S. was ready to deepen its military commitment in the region. The message was unmistakable. America wasn't just watching events unfold from afar, it was stepping in, taking action, and making it clear that the balance of power in the Pacific was about to change. The collision at sea had opened the door for the U.S. to reassert its presence in the region. For years, American influence had been questioned, but now, with warships on the move and new alliances forming, the U.S. was back in a big way. What started as a regional embarrassment for China quickly turned into a global power play. News outlets around the world covered the standoff, analyzing every maneuver and speculating about what might come next. In geopolitics, sometimes your worst day is your rival's best opportunity. For the U.S., this was a chance to remind the world of its reach, and for China, a moment of reckoning that would shape the future of the South China Sea. China's response? Overcompensate. They flooded Scarborough Shoal with ships, Coast Guard, militia, you name it, trying to look powerful again. The lone Philippine ship was suddenly surrounded by a 20-to-1 armada. But instead of intimidating anyone, it looked desperate, like flipping the board after losing a game. The world saw panic, not power. China's image repair only highlighted its insecurity. The more ships they sent, the more obvious their embarrassment became. Sometimes trying too hard just makes things worse. This wasn't a one-off. China's been using gray zone tactics for years. Water cannons, ramming, swarming, and even buzzing planes dangerously close. Just days after the crash, a Chinese jet nearly collided with a Philippine surveillance plane. All of this is about enforcing China's sweeping claims, despite an international tribunal ruling those claims invalid. China ignores the law, builds artificial islands, and bullies its neighbors. The collision was just the latest and most embarrassing example of a risky, aggressive strategy. When you play with fire, sometimes you get burned. This time, China burned itself. Why did this sting so much for China? They've spent trillions building a modern navy to look unstoppable and professional. But this crash made them look like amateurs. Two ships, same team, colliding while chasing a much smaller target. It exposed a lack of training, discipline, and coordination. If they can't avoid each other, how can they handle real conflict? The world saw the dragon trip over its own tail. China's rivals got a propaganda gift proof of aggression and incompetence, all in one viral video. For a country obsessed with image, this was a nightmare come true. So what does this blunder mean for China's dream of ruling the seas? It's not the end, but it's a serious dent in their reputation. Power isn't just about ships, it's about trust, discipline, and respect. This incident shattered the illusion of Chinese naval perfection. China's reaction, blaming others, flooding the area with ships, only made things worse. True leaders admit mistakes and learn from them. China doubled down and looked insecure. The Scarborough Shoal crash will be remembered as a turning point. It exposed the gap between China's ambitions and its actual capabilities. The world saw the emperor stumble and started asking hard questions. Subscribe for more, and keep watching the waves. Catch you next time, superstar. Don't forget to hit that like and smash subscribe and tell your friends. See you in the next fun video. Bye!